Hello, my name is Melinda Caudle, and I decided to do my final on the Pink Lady Slipper Orchid. So, yeah, I hope you enjoy. So my project is on the Pink Lady Slipper Orchid, and the Pink Lady Slipper Orchids can be considered perhaps the most uniquely beautiful species in the Orchidaceae family. The orchid is known for its lovely and delicate appearance and considered to be amongst the most popular and widely illustrated flowering plants used in photography. Lady slipper orchids can grow in both temperate and tropical regions, and it's not out of the question to run across one of these beautiful orchids in Kentucky. Some species of Orchidaceae have been deemed endangered or threatened in some states and countries due to risks that include orchid poaching, widespread orchid collections, and invasive or destruction of the species' natural habitat, and even harvesting for its believed medical properties. It has been found that this species of orchid does not reach maturity until around 14 years. So once this beautiful orchid is taken out of the wild, it's impossible to grow and cultivate elsewhere due to requiring Richtonia fungus to germinate. So the Cyperium acule, or better known as the Pink Lady Slipper orchid, is decreasing in numbers at an alarming rate. And this is happening now, and it is a serious issue. The Pink Lady Slipper is a large, showy wildflower belonging to the orchid family. It has two opposite basal leaves with conspicuous parallel veins and a large flower at the end of an erect stalk. The flower is magenta to whitish pink. Sometimes the whitish pink flowers will have darker pink vegetation. Rarely the flower may be all white. So this plant, it does grow 6 to 15 inches tall and flowers generally between May and July. Pink Lady Slipper takes many years to go from seed to mature plants. Seed-bearing harvest of wild lady slipper root is not considered sustainable, so pink lady slippers can live to be 20 years old or more. Next, we're going to talk about the location and biodiversity of the species. So this rare plant has a wide span reaching from central and eastern Canada down into the eastern part of the United States. Its habitat can stretch as far as Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama. The pink lady slipper is found in a mixed wood habitat consisting of pine and hemlock. It prefers to be in an area where the soil drains well, which would be the reason it's found in the rocky or mossy slopes, with the soil having a slightly acidic pH. So it also works hand in hand with fungus and the soil to reproduce. The fungus is in the Richtonia genus, and its role is to open the seed and provide nutrients for the seedling. So the fungus in the Richtonia genus, and its role is to open the seed and provide nutrients for the seeding. Once again, so the pink lady slippers seedlings can produce their own nutrients in the early stages of life. So the fungus provides the nutrients. And in return, after the plant is able to extract nutrients from the soil, it gives back to the fungus. And did you know this plant also used to be seeked for natural remedies? So orchids, of course, often have swollen ball-shaped tubers that were regarded in traditional practices as having medical value. So the root of the lady slipper, it was used as a remedy for nervousness, tooth pain, and muscle spasms. So in the late 1800s and 1900s, the lady slipper, along with other orchids, were widely used as a substitute for the European plant valerian for its sedative properties. So there are some known threats to the species for the pink lady slipper orchid. For habitat loss, threats which could lead to the loss of the species' habitat include logging, surface mining, deforestation, and human development. As for invasive species, The invasive species creating a risk to the lady slipper doesn't seem to play a major role in this situation that we're going to be discussing today. Population, however, the population of the lady slipper is low by the nature because of its reproduction cycle. So, in order to survive and reproduce, pink lady's slipper interacts with fungus in the soil, of course, from the Richtonia genus. And generally, orchid seeds do not have food supplies inside them like most other kinds of seeds. Pink lady slipper seeds require the threads of the fungus to break open the seed and attach them to it. So the fungus will pass on food and nutrients to the pink lady's slipper seed. And when the lady's slipper seed is older and producing most of its own nutrients, the fungus will extract the nutrients from the orchid roots. And this mutual beneficial relationship between the orchid and the fungus is known as symbiosis. Or, excuse me, symbiosis. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I do apologize, but essentially, this is typical of almost all of the orchid species when it comes to repopulating. Now, another threat would be pollution. Pollution could potentially cause threats to the species with runoff from factories or other local businesses. And climate change, of course. So climate change will play a bigger role in the future, considering its natural range. The pink lady slipper prefers more temperate climates and would fare well with a hotter, dry summer, of course. So we do have the projected impact of the climate change on the agricultural yields here. You see that there's going to be quite an increase in the future. Now, overexploitation. Of course, the pink lady slipper orchids have been sought after for many years and for numerous reasons, and some of which do include the healing medical qualities that we have discussed before, its photogenic nature. This is a very, very beautiful orchid. Consumerism, of course. Who doesn't love to get and receive flowers? And novelty. These are very, very beautiful. It does all come back to the beauty of these orchids. Some people like to collect them just to have them showcased. Very beautiful plants. The population is probably one of the greatest factors listed, along with habitat degradation. For this plant to produce seeds is a time-consuming process. The plant takes up to 14 years to reach maturity. Once it reaches maturity, it depends on factors such as bees and fungus. The bees deliver the pollen, and the fungus provides nutrients for the first few years. It's also difficult to have any success of translocating, so the natural habitat is very important. With logging, you lose the very important mixed hardwood forest that this plant needs to survive. And it also likes a soil that drains well. And with human development, we disturb natural substrate and replace it with concrete or manicured lawns with sprinkler systems. There is the North American Orchid Association. So with this, there's currently an ongoing project. It is called the North American Orchid Association. And the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center, along with the U.S. Botanical Garden, are collaborating with private and public organizations to conserve, cultivate, and restore North America's native orchids. And their goal is to collect seeds of all natural orchids, establish and maintain fungi that the orchids need, cultivate all natural orchids into botanical gardens, and provide train and educate the public essentially as well. So there is a link here if you would like to learn more about the North American Orchid Association. You can feel free to check them out. It's a pretty cool website. Of course, you can find additional information also on the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services webpage. It has the entire orchid family listed, so the plant can be sustainably traded. And this has made it illegal to sell or trade without a permit. So Appendix 1 being the most strictly regulated from what I could tell. But here's also the link that will lead you to the index if you would like to take a look at that as well. Very informative for your area. And then we come to the management plan. So my plan of action would be to establish a few small reserves. Considering the Pink Lady slipper is mainly in the eastern part of the U.S. where public land isn't as available, this may be the only option to obtaining the habitat that has a healthy population. So also in consideration, the Pink Lady slipper doesn't do well with transplants, and raising one from a seed is just as difficult. The best option is to preserve the habitat essentially. So this orchid, like others, has a symbolic relationship with fungus and the soil. My main concern will be on habitat preservation for the populations of pink lady slippers. And we just have my main goal listed once again, and that is of course the conservation project is to locate and protect populations of pink lady slippers. So here we have a picture of some very beautiful pink lady slippers. And the management plan in action. So this is where I get busy. So after locating a healthy population, I would purchase the land and make a small reserve, and all access to the property would be restricted, unless for research purposes. So I would first need to get a baseline population of mature orchids, and the researchers and I would need to visit the area as the orchids are blooming. So the first week in July, the mature orchids will have flowers or a bulb about to make a flower, of course. And considering the reserve would only be a few acres, 2 researchers will be able to document the whole population when traveling by foot. So this information will be collected every year in the first week of July, and the numbers are compared. These plants take 14 years to mature, so I don't expect to see a large increase every year in population. As long as the total each year matches the numbers from the previous year with a few percentage change for natural death and new life, I would consider my project a success. And I've also included some links that I had used for research along in creating this presentation for you, which was very fun and very informative, and I had learned a lot about this beautiful plant that I did not know before, and I feel very confident in making my choice and planning out my action plan, and I'm very happy that I was able to share this information with you today. So hopefully you've learned something about the pink lady slipper. Thank you, and I hope that you have a wonderful day, and I've had a pleasure in this class. Thank you.